Okay.
Jason, your study looks fun. You know,
Yes.
model plan?
Yeah, I do have a few. This COVID thing has made it a little bit. I've got 10 remote control airplanes built now, and I've only flown 5 of them.
Well, it's productive at least, right? You're using your time productively.
Could be. I'm probably just going to crash them all on the first time I take them out anyway, so I'll have backups.
Well, invite me along. I wouldn't mind seeing a crash and burn.
I usually do record them. Not always put them on, but what did we say, Steve? We 6?
Get 6.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is the August 25th, 2020 Planning Commission work session, time 6 p.m. And since we are still having some, we're still doing this thing from home, having the Pledge of Allegiance is a little difficult at this time, so we're going to bypass that. And we will move to a declaration of conflicts, which is agenda item number 1. Do any commissioners have any conflicts that they wish to declare at this time?
No.
No.
Wouldn't think so. It's work session, so
I don't have a conflict, but I got a comment for the record.
that's good.
The
That's why we're here.
mayor sent out a white paper with attachments. If you will look at attachment, just a second, I'll find it. Okay, where is it? Anyhow,
Is this
I'll do
about
it
the
again.
agenda item?
I'm sorry?
Is this about the agenda item?
Well, one of the places he says in violations happens to be my house. So I think I ought to make a record that my property is not in violation because my driveway was cut before 2017. But it is illustrated in his pictorials.
Oh, so he sent you guys a white paper?
I didn't see one.
I haven't seen that.
You seen it?
On page 8 of the white paper.
Yeah, I received it.
I didn't.
Did he email that to you or?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it sounds like 2 people received that email.
I didn't receive it.
Me either.
Okay.
And Steve, you didn't receive it?
Nope.
All right. Well, in the white paper, the mayor did go through basically what the substance of this, what we're going to be discussing today. There wasn't, as far as my impression, a really opinion on it. There wasn't any opinions that he expressed in there that I saw anyway. Did you, Taurus?
No.
I'm a little, if I'm a little concerned that the planning commission may be, or may have, we'll have to talk to Andy or Brody, that being directed by the council or mayor when they are not supposed to be.
We can do that. We can forward the email to you, Steve. There wasn't a direction of any type. He just said, this is some information for you that you can take into consideration. And that's pretty much as he.
Didn't you have a copy of the email? I thought you mentioned it the last time we had a meeting.
He didn't send it to me. I got it from a different source.
Okay.
The
That
concern
happens.
I have is the planning commission is a separate body from the council and mayor, and I'd have to find out from legal if this email is something that you guys can discuss.
Okay. So how do we proceed then?
And for me, it's just concerning that only a couple members of the planning commission would get that and not the entire commission, if that's something that's being considered or talked about.
Well, okay, I got it because I went and picked it up. Okay, I didn't get it emailed, but Steve had talked last meeting that there was this white paper that the mayor had, and that was why we were going to talk about this. When I looked at the agenda the other day, I looked for a copy of it to be included in the agenda. It wasn't there. I happened to be able to walk to the mayor's house and get a copy. That's how I got it. At that time, he told me, as was his custom, he forwarded that to the chairman of the commission. That's why Jason has got it. So those are the facts about who's got email and who doesn't. Obviously, everybody can have one before our next meeting. And anyhow, let's continue.
It looks like we're going to hold a second for Steve.
Is it possible to carry on this discussion without mentioning the substance of what's in the letter and just talk about the subject in general terms?
As far as I know, and yeah, but I think we'll wait to see what Steve says. I think he's talking to Andy, and we can continue on it now or not. We don't want to be in breach of something if
Well, we
I'm the only one that
certainly
was-
cannot vote on it tonight because this is a working meeting. So any discussion we would have to be reconfirmed at our next meeting where we have a public meeting, we would vote on it.
Right.
that is correct.
Well, is the questioning concern as to whether the white paper has some sort of counsel or advice from the council? And if so, we shouldn't be, we're a separate body, so we shouldn't be confirming with them what they're wanting, or so that's what the question is what's in the white paper. Does it have any kind of that counsel going on?
No, not in my opinion. I think the mayor was pretty careful about not doing that, but until others can see it and judge for themselves, then, it's only my opinion at this point.
Okay.
Sorry, you guys are having a discussion that I wasn't listening to. Andy said if a couple of you have received it, then it can be part of the discussion.
Cannot,
You can
again, okay.
have it where I can bring it up and share. Jason, do you have it digitally that you could share if you wanted?
I do. I would have to get it from the email here.
I'm
And
trying to find it on my, but
you want me to share my screen to do that, or would you like me to email
yeah,
it?
either one.
Okay, maybe I can do both here.
It's just unfortunate that not everybody got it.
That's true. Yes.
And most of it was just, he had a few pictures of areas that are currently what he called in violation. I wasn't aware that Taurus's was one of them. Most of them were on a street that's just north of City Hall. Public Works had redone the curb gutter and sidewalk and created some non-conformities, so to speak, by what they did. Anywho.
Okay, I'm working on bringing it up here.
Hey, while he's doing that, Steve, could you share with us what her 2 shillings worth are?
Her biggest concern was kind of what she made comment to last time was people parking to where people can't use the sidewalk. So her comment was, my only concern would be the pedestrian access might be impeded depending on the scenario that is decided. I've noticed that in some occasions, property owners and or their visitors have used the curb cuts as extra parking spot, which can then be in the way of pedestrians as they navigate the sidewalk. By this, I mean that I've seen pedestrians have to walk into the street when there have been vehicles parked across the sidewalk. If the language is amended or tweaked, would there be provisions that would include ensuring pedestrian access to the entire sidewalk?
Isn't that another ordinance?
Yeah,
It
they
is.
can't, they
Impeding
can't block the
sidewalk.
sidewalk. They can't park on the sidewalk. They can't block the sidewalk, and they can't park on the park strip. So,
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with curb cuts.
Correct. That's already covered.
it's, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it's a
already
valid
covered, so I don't
concern,
think
but
we
it's
need to
just,
modify that.
doesn't deal with curb cuts in general.
Jason, you've read this. Do you have any preliminary comments?
My opinion was already much of what was brought up in his white paper before this. So it's, I don't know, if you look at my neighborhood, we have really large, we don't have curb cuts. There's no curb at all. There's no gutter. There's no curb. It is right from the street to grass, and we have asphalt. And our entire neighborhood is in violation of this because it's all, everybody's walks, or I should say driveways, are the entire width. They're way wide. Everybody has asphalt approaches coming from the street to the concrete, and almost everybody in my neighborhood has driveways that go right up to their neighbor's property line. So I do understand that there could be some situational one-by-one instances where it might not be the best place to do it. But at this time, my opinion is I would prefer that it go back to allowing it, the curb or the driveway to be up to the edge. But
Well, you've got to specify it because driveway can, currently it's the drive approach that can't. So drive approach is between curb and sidewalk, the driveway's after sidewalk to house.
Yeah, there is a conflict in the in our ordinances. It allows us to put a parking pad right up to the property line. But the curb cut requires that we have 4.5 feet from the property line. What people are doing, just so everybody knows where I'm coming from, I talked to Ross Oliver today. Ross is the Director of Public Works. Ross says that he has basically 3 problems with the current way that it operates. The first one is that people put bricks or wood where the curb is cut so that they can get their recreational vehicles up into their driveway. And what that causes is it blocks water when it rains. Also, that it causes problem for the street sweeper. I can't say that, it's 2 S's. And more important to me with what he said was that these people are driving off on these curb cuts and they're breaking them off, and the city is having to go out and replace them. And so we have just got, I mean, I do, if you find, when you get this, look at page 8. My driveway is right to the property line, the curb cuts to the property line. And again, I will repeat, I did it before this, this ordinance, okay? And I have no problem going in and out, but technically it would be in violation, except I would be grandfathered in. So I have no, I have no dog in this hunt because I'm complying with the code at the time, but it is, my across the street neighbor is right now in the process of cutting his so that he can get his big rig in without going across the curb. And I kind of agree with Jason. I see no reason not to remove it. But we need to have a public meeting next
yeah.
month. And
This
The
is
other
just a
problem, we can
discussion
make
to
a
see where,
decision.
what direction you guys want to go.
The
So
other
it's-
problem, safety wise, like Taurus is saying, is when they do snow removal. And
Yeah.
that's wood or metal or whatever's there can really cause problems.
Ross did tell me I could represent to you that he would be happy if that ordinance was not in place.
Well,
So he-
in defense, not every scenario would they be able to have a curb cut all the way. Because right now, just a few lines above it, only 30% of the width of your property can be a curb cut or drive approach. So if I'm sitting at a 20-foot wide drive approach and I've got 15 feet on my side, I may not be able to get all that 15 feet because I'll reach that maximum of 30%. So in Ross's scenario, there will still be that problem. Even if we remove it and have the curb cut all the way to property line, some scenarios, they won't get it because the width is already, the maximum width has already been hit. So not every scenario will this solve. Another concern, we can get the language if you want as well. Jason, I just got that email.
Sorry, I didn't have everybody's email address, so I was only able to send it to Ryan and Steve, and if somebody
I can
forward it out to them,
share it. So
great, okay.
Ask a question, Steve. In the notes, you put like Clearfield had no restrictions or whatever. Does that mean anyone can have whatever kind of cuts they want? Like if they need to have an extra driveway, because we can't park on the street and you don't want them parking in front of their driveway, and people have more stuff now than they've ever had. So people need a place to park their things. So I
Well,
get why people put their wood in that. So is Clearfield saying that people can have an extra driveway to put their stuff? I'm just trying to understand.
okay, extra driveway is a completely different question.
Oh, okay.
Because again, our ordinance only allows for one approach for 100-foot width of property. You can have a second approach if you're 150 feet. 3 approaches if you're 200 feet. So most properties in an R18 zone are 80 feet wide or less. So they're going to get one approach. So the problem of multiple driveways goes away because they can't have them.
Right.
But then that's why people are parking and putting up curbing, right? Because they don't have
Well,
anywhere to park their stuff.
They're widening, they want to widen the approach, which was what we're talking about. If I have it here, I kind of wish this was in person because,
It's easier that way.
yeah, so got your property. Everybody see this?
Yes.
Sidewalk, sorry, it's not going to be straight lines. Curb. Oh. Small house on a big lot, right? So your drive approach is this. Okay. It could be, this could be a 2-car garage, so we're about 20 feet. I may have 15 feet over here, and the total property is 80 feet wide. Kind of get an idea here. Now,
yes,
I've got an RV pad over here so I can park my extra cars, my trailer, what have you. What people are wanting, what this discussion is, let me see if I can erase here. Is now, can I have this? There we go.
You just drove my driveway.
And I now have this drive approach all the way over to here. The property line would meet curb. So
That all could be where you pull in?
Well, that's
Yes.
what this question is.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
But the issue is, if I only have an 80-foot wide property, let me get my calculator. Just do it on the phone.
There's a difference between total frontage of property and then house frontage, right?
Yeah, and the language is property, not house.
So can I just ask if I'm understanding this correctly? So the way my house sits is I have this like that, and then my side yard is along the road 15 feet. And on the other side, I have 15 feet. So whatever
But you're a corner lot, right?
no, I'm not. I'm right on 4,800. So if my house is 51 feet across and I have 15 feet of yard on each side of me, that total property is what you're looking at.
Right.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand. Thank you.
Yeah. So 30% of 80 is 24 feet.
Okay,
So this discussion is not about how much drive approach width
You can have.
of the property can you have? This is, can this drive approach go all the way to where where the property line would meet the curb? But in your scenario, Sam, if I have 15 feet over here and already have a 20-foot driveway or drive approach, my approach can only be 24 feet wide. So you're going to get a 4-foot wider driveway.
even though a yard connects next to me because it's sidewalk?
Well, yeah, you have a neighbor over here, right?
40%, and you
No,
would-
there's just big yard between us.
Yeah, but
So they're
But
on the, I guess I'm kind of a corner lot. I don't know. My house is weird because one faces, I'm just trying to picture on my own house how this would look so I can put it to relevance.
yeah. So the question is not the 30%, it's where can this drive approach be?
And you said before, if it touches another driveway, that's a problem because then it would be one long, there has to be a thing between the two driveways, correct?
Well, that was the thought when we adopted the ordinance. One, that you don't have two driveways, and let me everything. So I have a house and a house, and a property line, a driveway, and a driveway. Concern is if all of a sudden I have this drive approach that's now 50 feet long, but no break in between.
Oh, okay. I understand that.
When concern is, the length of this driveway, because two people are on the same side, but also snow, where can I put the snow? Here, if we left a 9-foot gap in between, there's a place you can put collection of snow. Then outside the drive approach, I can put snow over here and snow over here, right? If all of a sudden we got rid of that, there's less place to put the snow, one for the snow plow and two for the person shoveling. That was one thought. Again,
So
we
with
don't have
that,
go ahead.
so with that, then, so we're trying to avoid having one great big long one. So
Right.
if we were to allow it up to the property edge, then we would have to make something in there that says, okay, you can have it up to the edge, but no two approaches can be more than, or can be less than X amount of feet apart. That way it
Well,
still creates the parking, but then it becomes a battle as to, okay, who widens their approach
Yeah,
first.
who got first?
Right.
So and again, the concern was when the ordinance was adopted was if you say 4.5 feet, then you're left with a 9-foot gap between. Now, this scenario is probably 5% of the city. So it won't affect most people. Most people have driveways on the opposite side. So they're, whoops, I just erased my house. So most,
I have 89 units in my HOA and none of the driveways are contiguous.
right.
They're all opposite of each other. So
It's
no one in my
Right.
HOA that has
it's
that.
more rare. It's a more rare than it is in common. And again, like I said, most of them are opposite of each other.
Well, my question has to do with 4.5 feet's not that far. I mean, you can't, if you've got a driveway up to your fence line and you got 4.5 feet of approach, it shouldn't be that hard to angle your vehicle in,
Well,
that far.
Yeah,
But it
I
depends
don't
where
know,
you
'cause
live. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have a trailer. But it's much easier if I can go straight.
Yeah, and I get that.
Some of the
But
comments I've gotten.
Hey, Steve, I got a couple of thoughts on this I was thinking about it after we talked last session. And you might have to help draw this for me because I probably won't explain it very well.
Well, you can share your screen if you want and do the whiteboard.
I've never used the whiteboard before, but but maybe you can help me out. So the first concern is more of an engineering concern. So let's assume you have two owners that have a driveway, an area we're talking about where they want to both put it right at the property line. So you have a driveway, and then you have the flare of the driveway because you have a curve down to a flare. And let's say you have both of these flares that butt up against each other right at the property line. Let's say that there's a seam in the curb right there, somewhere in between these two drive approaches. So all it takes is a car being careless that bumps into one of those sections of curbs, and the whole section of curb has to be replaced now. Because when you cut it down, you've cut out any structural integrity that curb has. And it would be an easy thing to have happen.
Kind of like this. Am I drawing it?
Yeah, so you got this little piece in between of curb that sticks up in between the two drive approaches. And let's say somebody in their car, they're pulling up to park and they bump into that piece of curb there and it breaks out. And especially if there's a seam anywhere close to it. There's a seam in your curb every 10 feet. So that's an engineering concern by maybe having your approaches too close together. Now all of a sudden this whole section of curb has to be replaced. The other thought I kind of had on this was not so much an engineering thing as it is just a responsibility for maintenance. So this space now in this same scenario we're talking about, in between the curb and the sidewalk, you have a little triangular shaped piece of ground that nobody wants to put grass in. Nobody wants to maintain. Nobody wants to put little sprinklers in there on that little corner of their lot. So I would say if this is something we wanted to implement, there would have to be some condition that they do something with that little piece of property, or it's just going to grow weeds. Because nobody's going to put a sprinkler over there for that little tiny piece of grass. They'd have to cement the whole thing across, or they'd have to put some kind of brick in there or something to keep the weeds from growing in there. And I would say, you wouldn't want rock or something in there because that always just turns out bad. But those are just a couple of thoughts I had. And I'm wondering if that's why some of these other cities have adopted, an ordinance that says at least 4.5 feet, because then you have a section of grass over there that you could put in that's, 4.5, 5 feet wide on your side, or, you have some room to do some landscaping, or, and then you mentioned that the snow removal is a concern, where to put snow. I'm wondering if that's maybe those two reasons are why some of the cities are leaning toward, keeping some distance there.
Yeah.
Those are just a couple of thoughts I had.
Those are some really good thoughts. A couple of the things that I have thought a little bit about in doing this. I think we definitely need to separate out residential from commercial. I don't think this has any place in commercial at all. There's some things that I've read in the research that make that so it's really not a good idea to do that as far as pedestrian traffic. Then really the other concern that I have is on roads like 4800 may be a good example, 5600, where it's just a horrible idea to do this kind of a thing because of traffic flow and things like that, where you're creating a new place and maybe encouraging that kind of parking in those areas. That's just a little bit of the research that I've done on concerns that I have.
And Ryan, is someone who lives on 4800 and has a trailer, I think it's an excellent idea because we are not, if we're straight back, we wouldn't be blocking traffic to pull our trailer in. Where now we're trying to angle it in and we block traffic. Because I do have side parking and I can't pull straight out, and we block traffic every single time because it's a harder process to pull back.
Good point. I don't have a trailer. That's just some of the things that I've read in researching it. So
well, I know
appreciate your opinion on that.
And if you drive up any of these streets on a Sunday afternoon, pay attention when people are bringing their trailers home on 4000, 4856, 6000 Midland Drive. They're always backing up traffic because you have to angle them, where if you could pull straight back, it would be I think it would be safer. And I live on 4800. So, but I appreciate your comments, Ryan.
This one just doesn't move the needle a whole lot for me, other than those couple of things. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other.
But my attitude about it is whatever we do, we've got to avoid having that one little lump of a curb there, because I only see that as a hazard. So you either need to allow it to be combined with the neighbor, or have there be some kind of X amount of feet that has to be between approaches, but still allow somebody to put their approach up to the fence line. Then it's just a first come, first serve. That's my opinion. You got to find some way to eliminate that. Now, whether the snow, you don't have a place to put the snow. It just might be a matter of you have to go the other direction with it. I don't know.
Now, on the two driveways together, again, like I said, it's the exception to the rule. There are very few of them in the city, so it could always be that if this body says, okay, we want to amend it to allow for the curb cut to be at property line, and then it angles towards, except for if there's two driveways that are together, then there needs to be, and you could say, 4 feet, so they could get almost to 2 feet to property line, but leaving not just that small triangle, but it's a little bit bigger now, that if something runs into it, it doesn't get damaged as much.
Right.
So, you could say, because it's not normal to have the driveways like this, that you could have that exception that if your two driveways are on the same side and you both want to cut, you have to leave X number of feet from property line, and you can make it smaller than 4.5, or you can make it, say 2 feet.
Well, and
leave something there.
There might be a situation where, a lot of it is a one by one. It depends on the whole situation there, because it might be better off to where you could put two driveways combined together. Maybe they're both only 10 feet wide or whatever, not very wide. So it's
my car. There's my van right there. That picture right there.
No,
that's my house.
Let's just give him a ticket now.
Throw the book at him. So Samantha, let me ask you a question here. In your scenario, what would you do with the excess snow in a year where it snows 6 times in a couple week period? Where would you put the snow in your scenario? Is that an issue we need to think about what would happen there?
Well, no, because the way my property is, so we own 15 feet of side yard. And then, so I face 48 and my neighbor right next to us, that house faces 3,200. So I'm technically the last house on this block, but there's another one that hits that faces the dead end road, and our yards can kind of connect. Does that make sense? I would like to hear what Jason thinks, because he said they don't have any curbs. So Jason, what do you think? Do you guys have trouble with where the snow goes? Because already you have that scenario where everyone doesn't have a curb, if I understood you correctly.
Right.
We
We
have
don't.
sidewalk.
But most of ours are the opposite. We don't have houses with adjoining driveways. They're all on the opposite sides, but we just go to the other side. I mean, my neighbor doesn't care if I put the snow on his grass or if I put it on mine. I mean, some neighbors maybe not like that. Then you just push the snow to the other side. And when I get to the end of my RV pad, I just push it to my backyard. So I don't know, it's never been an issue with us in my area, but yeah, we don't have any curb or gutter or nothing, but like I said, it's poured right to the property line on where I'm at. But the other difference that I don't know that it really makes a big difference, but since my area doesn't have a curb or gutter, this, the front park strip that normally is landscaped on people, it's a small, what is it, 4 feet? Steve, I don't know how wide that is.
4.5.
4.5. My section that's like that is more like 20 feet. It's not 4 feet. And so there's like 20 feet of park strip between my house and the driveway or the road. And that section is kind of, in my neighborhood, is like dipped a little bit. So water kind of runs off to there and collects and goes down to the water or goes into the storm drains. So there's no curb or gutter to run water any direction. And I live right in front of a cul-de-sac, and the snow plow always clears the cul-de-sac and pushes all the snow right to my front yard, right in my front yard. But again, I have to put up little reflectors stuck in my grass so that he doesn't tear up my yard every time he pushes the snow up into my yard. But that's just something I deal with, and and that makes it a little tougher for me to uncover my mailbox at times. But that's why I bought a BF snow blower, so I don't have to worry about that so much. But
Now, looking at those pictures that you just showed, some of those have the sidewalk starts to dip down in the neighbor's yard, right? So it's not just, so the cutout actually begins at the property line and goes into the neighbor's yard, not necessarily ends at the property line. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, that's not correct. Mine ends at the property line, and all the rest of them in my HOA ends at the property line.
But
You also should know.
pull that up on, it was sample 5 or, okay, that one right there.
Yes.
Okay, where that sidewalk that is tipped, that approach, in my opinion, that approach is partially in the neighbor's yard.
I see what you're saying there. Yes, that's correct. You're correct there. I was saying where the red arrow is and where the curb meets the street, that's on the property line.
Right.
By the way, so everybody knows, you have to have a permit to do this cut. Okay, it's a no fee permit, but you got to get a permit. The city usually doesn't do it. They have a contractor that does it. And the contractor is the one that is violating the city ordinance at the city's basically direction. So it's a muddle. So in any event, Steve, you're going to send out this white paper to everybody so that we're all looking at the same information next week or next meeting.
Yeah, I can send it.
I think that would be helpful.
Stephen, why are we talking about this again? I know you told us, but I just can't remember. It's the first week of school. My brain's mush.
the city council's asked us to revisit it.
Yeah, the mayor and the council had asked the planning commission to readdress this.
And so are they Are they getting feedback from citizens that this is something citizens want or don't want, or they just think this could be like, why are we revisiting it? Do you know
Well,
why?
not exactly. The mayor put this paper together and had some pictures and said, you know, here's a concern that we have properties like this one, properties like this one, some that are like this, that this is what road that the city contractor did and Public Works allowed this to occur. Same way, this is on the same street.
And those all should have been 4.5 feet away from the property line?
All should have been 4.5 feet. So right now, the city has done some projects and are violating our own ordinance.
Right.
Okay, so stop right there on that thing. So if this wasn't a house right here, but that was their property line, and that was 4.5 feet over, they could do this and be in compliance, correct? So say this house wasn't here. Okay, so you see the car. Yeah, say that house wasn't there and they wanted to do this, and this was the property line right there instead of this. They could have done this because this is grass and that's 4.5 feet from the property line. Then
I
this
guess
would
I'm
be
not
like,
quite understanding what you mean by, because the red arrow represents property line.
I know, I'm saying, if I'm trying to understand what you're saying about the 4.5 feet. So
4.5 would be from this line this way.
I know, but so what's out of compliance about this? Because it's cut all the way to the side?
It's
Yes.
cut beyond, here's property line. It's cut another 1.5 feet beyond property line.
Oh,
This
so,
cut right here should be somewhere over here.
okay, so this would be okay if that house was the property line and say not a house. Then that would be okay. Because it would be
This-
4.5 feet from the property line.
What
Like if
she's
their
saying
property
is,
line was moved over.
if the property line was another 10 feet over,
Yes.
then there would be nothing wrong with this. That is correct.
Yeah,
Now,
if it was 10 feet to the east, yes.
Okay,
Now,
okay.
one other quick question though. The 4.5 feet, is that from where the slope starts, the low point, or where it
Top cut. Where it first
top cut?
cut.
Okay, so that technically then that is over 6 feet further than it should be.
About.
No, but
It-
can't really use right now, so we're downstairs.
I've seen curbs that are not a full curb, but they're
Roll curbs.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Would those be an option if you're within 4.5 feet? Can you?
No.
You don't have to cut those.
The other issue that's just brand new that we as a city haven't had to deal with, and there'll be 2 subdivisions that now have to deal with it. They're called LEDs, not light-wise, or LID, there we go. Where the EPA and stuff don't want water going directly into the storm drain from the street. They want it now to go into some sort of landscape strip, be filtered by the landscape, and then go into the storm drain. So in most cases, and Franson subdivision will be one of the first ones that will see that in the city, where their park strip won't be flat with the sidewalk and back of curb, but they will dip down. And then every so often you'll have, and here, let me do another whiteboard. So if you're looking, here's the street, then you got a curb, then over here you've got a sidewalk. So before, this park strip was basically level. So curb and sidewalk, right?
Mhm.
Well, now the requirements that are being done is the park strip will now become a swell. So the water will come into, and if you look at the part of it, this portion of the curb would be cut to allow water to come in into the swell, be filtered, and then eventually somewhere down here, come back out and go into the land drain.
Yeah, there's areas of my neighborhood that are exactly like that.
Yeah, but yours was done a long time ago, and I think it's kind of more by accident than by requirement. But this is now going to become a requirement.
So we're going back to being in Hooper with the ditches on each side of our road?
They're not going to be huge ditches. There'll be just enough so you can get some landscaping that the
Right.
hills and stuff can be filtered by the landscape before it goes in. I mean, this, 6-8 inches deep.
So then with the approach going into your driveway, you're going to have that.
There'll be a pipe.
Okay. Okay.
So the concern now comes is I really want this resolved, because as we start getting homes built in that Franson subdivision, it's going to be a bigger deal to cover this up than currently with your park strip flattened even with the sidewalk. Because now this is part of the detention area, and now we're taking it away. So issues come around. So, if we do allow for it, the curb cut to be right at property line, with the exception, and I'm again just putting words out there, you guys will have to confirm that's what you want, that if you have two drive approaches next to each other, there is some sort of gap. So it really comes down to what you guys want. James Felt's over there with a smirk on his face.
I'm probably thinking the same thing you are. I don't want to speak for you, but I think this is a public works maintenance nightmare.
LID, yes.
This puts a lot of onus on the residents to maintain this. And I live in the same subdivision that Jason does, and half of our culverts are silted in.
Yeah.
And so this works great for the first 5 years, 10 years. After that, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
You get what happens in my neighborhood, our neighborhood, that people start filling them in. They move in, they don't know what the rules were or why it's there, and they hate it. And they're like, water just sits there all the time. I'm going to fill the sucker in. So they start filling in the areas. I know a lot of my neighborhood, most of that areas have been filled in a lot of.
Yeah.
So who's requiring this?
Like Jason Felt said, it is going to become a nightmare. But
It is what it is.
Who's requiring this?
Our federal government is mandating that cities adopt these things. And on the good side is Roy is 95% built out. So unless we start tearing things out and have to rebuild, we don't have to do too many of these. I feel for cities like Hooper and stuff are just now beginning to build. This is going to become really fun.
Well, I'm still wondering about I mentioned the rolled curb. Could you put in, is it hard to run back a trailer up over one of those rolled curbs? And is that advised or not?
No, but most of our, other than a few subdivisions here and there, we have the regular curb.
Mm-hmm.
And if we just started with rolled curbs everywhere and that's all we did, then.
So I guess the concern is if somebody wants to cut out their curb, you'd be cutting it out. You wouldn't be re-pouring it and unrolling it.
And that's one of the issues that I've heard. When I used to work at Green's Concrete Cutting way back in the day, and cutting the curb, it's cheaper and easier for a contractor to come in and pour all the curbs all the way, like the way they are, and then come back in and cut them out. It's quicker and easier and so when a contractor's got to form up all of that and pour it, it takes a lot more time. So it means a lot more money. So the house, the concrete alone is going to go up, and the price of having the concrete poured like that's going to go up quite a bit.
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering though, if somebody were to come in and want to widen that, I know they can go in and just cut it out would be easy. But if they're if we said, okay, well, we're not going to let you go up to the fence line, but if you were to do a rolled curb there, which, you know, my dad was
You'd
a
have to
concrete
pull out
man,
the
but I
curb and
wasn't.
gutter and re-pour it.
Yeah, you'd have to pull the gutter and re-pour it, which would be a lot of work, which,
And really expensive. 'Cause you pour concrete and forming it up and
yeah.
so really, I mean, this discussion again is just to get an idea if the planning commission wants to move forward and amend it. Like Taurus had said, we do have to have a public hearing and get that going. If the planning commission, you guys want to just continue the conversation, I can send out the mayor's white paper and you guys can read it. And then we can discuss it again next month. You guys can kind of drive around and get better ideas of what people have, what they don't have, what are some areas of concern before we, go in a particular direction.
And do we know why Public Works is violating our own ordinance now? And I don't mean that to be that's just an honest question. If we have an ordinance in place that doesn't allow that, are we trying to fix that issue, or is this something that we really need to address? And I don't know that perspective. I don't have that information. So that's why I'm just trying to get a little bit more background on this.
Some of the issue is, again, it's in the zoning ordinance, and Public Works does not deal with zoning. They just deal with curb, gutter, sidewalk, the street, the water lines. So to them, it's something that they don't have in the back of their mind that they're need to be worried about.
I think probably a lot of it was, I mean, those driveways, even though they replaced all that infrastructure, the driveways were still there. And they were just trying to make the curb fit with the driveways that were already in place.
Then that could be on that one road.
Yeah, I would have a tendency myself to somehow do it by, a 1-by-1 case. In general, I would leave the 4.5 feet there, but I do believe there's probably situations where it would make sense for them to be allowed to go up to the property line. I don't know how you put that into place as far as, putting it into the rules, into the code.
How often do you come across these permits, Steve?
Quite a bit. I mean,
Quite a bit.
I have 2 phone calls today that they asked questions about. And
And how often are they trying to go within, how often would they want to go within the 4.5 foot area?
Almost every time.
Yeah.
If he's got the one in mind, the conflict is that I'm allowed to put a pad. First of all, I'm required to put a pad to put a vehicle on my lawn, right? Okay, we got to do it either pad or concrete or whatever. Okay, and I can go to my property line. So I get the permit to do that, and that's good. And then I want the curb cut so I can drive straight in, like Samantha says, it's safer and easier. But this ordinance says I can't do that. I've got to take 4.5 feet out of my new driveway to do it. And so there's a conflict there of what we should be doing.
And that does make sense. I mean, if we're requiring that and allowing that on the one case, then it's a matter of we need to accommodate somehow the other case. Whether it by, like I say, whether it be 1-by-1 or by just allowing it.
The issue I have is case by case is if I don't have a set of standards.
No.
Right, and I get that, and that becomes a
We
problem.
can now say I'm being arbitrary and capricious because.
Right.
For whatever.
So the options to me then are we leave it as is. We allow up to the line, but then we've got to figure out how to avoid that little triangle piece, which would be say, okay, we have to have X amount of feet between approaches.
But if we simply repeal the 4.5 foot requirement, then they're allowed to go to the property line.
Okay,
I believe it
so-
to be a simple solution.
Okay, so if they're allowed to go to the property line, then does that mean I can have a joining driveway with my neighbor?
I would suspect it would. Okay, I haven't discussed that with Public Works, but I suspect it would, but I don't know what the problem is with that.
Well, and
Why
I,
is that a problem?
well, and that becomes a question is there a problem with it? Is the snow removal that big of a deal to deal with? I mean, that was what other concerns would there be with joining up with your neighbors?
Well, I
approach?
think we should talk to Ross and find out. Let's get some facts and,
Yeah,
'cause we
well, and
can't, we
and
can't
that- and
vote
that's
tonight.
fine. And I
So-
would be fine with that too. We just need to avoid that little triangle piece, I guess, is the main thing. Whether it's eliminated altogether or given the distance. That's really what it
Or-
comes down to.
If you think it okay, Steve, would it be okay for us to invite Ross to be in our next Zoom meeting? And he can answer those questions from us or from the public?
Next work session?
You want to do another work session or you want to put it on for a public hearing?
Well,
You
unless
think
I
we-
have verbiage, exact verbiage that you guys want, it'd be pointless for a public hearing because
Okay,
verbiage to be presented and approved.
okay, then my suggestion is that we have another work session, that we get the Director of Public Works to participate. We all get a copy of the paper that started all of this. We do our homework, and then when we have the next meeting, we flesh it out. In fact, maybe Brody ought to be here so we know what legal language we need, and then we can proceed that way. Anybody object?
Oh,
If they do, they'll be overruled.
I mean, I'd be fine with that. I'm just wondering, I mean, can we expedite it somehow and make it quicker? Because I'm not against going up against to the fence line as long as whatever concerns there were with doing that are
Yeah.
resolved.
I
No.
certainly don't have the expertise to know. So let's get the guy that does and he'll tell us,
Okay.
and let's get the legal eagle that needs the language, and then we can move on.
Okay,
Yeah,
so what
personally,
we
I-
need,
Go ahead.
go ahead. Well, what I'm saying is we should probably, I mean, yeah, we need to know what are the pros, what are the cons of doing it? Are there, structurally, engineering wise, what problems are there with both directions? And, and can they be resolved? How would they be resolved if?
Okay.
Okay, I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I would suggest.
And that's why, I'd rather be cautious and go have another work session and flush some of these things out rather than knee jerk, have a public hearing to pull it out and then all of a sudden find out there's bigger problems by allowing it than we.
Okay, yeah.
Steve, you can write Dear Diary tonight because I'm telling you that's correct.
Okay, we seem to be mostly in agreement that we'll just do this on a separate work session.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay,
And
Well-
one city I would like to kind of have you guys look at is Centerville. There's a more concern with utility boxes. My driveway's on the same side as my Comcast and my second water. I do think language does need to be in there that we don't interfere with those. So even though, you say you guys come up with the idea of going all the way to property line, there does need to be some concern with utility boxes that might be right there.
would that
That's a good
be
point.
also any easement whatsoever, Steve? Would that
I'm
be,
not concerned about easement because,
this would be, that
Right
would be
now-
a utility easement then.
yeah, right now most subdivisions require a public utility easement on every other side property line, but we allow for your driveway, the concrete to go all the way to property line. So it's not a concern. It's more of concern when you're trying to build a building in the easement, that you're going into the ground. Usually a driveway, most utility companies aren't concerned with because they can bore right underneath it, or it's a simple, hammer out and re-pour. So I'm not concerned with it, an easement being covered in concrete. So.
So can we then get that list of pros and cons before the work session? I mean, is there any way for him to?
I can talk to Ross, and I can even talk to our engineer and just see what, for them to put some sort of list together.
Yeah, that would be appreciated. That way we can look at it and see what, because there might be some problems, issues that that none of us are really aware of. That's.
No.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds like we got a plan here. So yeah, if they don't want to attend the meeting and want to just give us all the written paperwork, that would be acceptable. Would that be acceptable to everybody else as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I think we've gotten that hashed out. Do we want to move on to agenda item number 3?
Comes down to you guys, not me.
How about maybe do I ask for a motion to go to agenda item number 3? Make sure.
No, I mean, if everybody's done, just move forward.
I think we've taken it to where we want to get it to by having another meeting and learning more about it.
Okay, I just don't want to heavy-handedly say, hey, we're done. Okay. What I'm going to do now. Okay, we're done. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 3, which is Commissioner's Minute. Any commissioners got anything besides what we got going on here?
No.
No?
Nope. Okay, let's move to staff update. Steve?
I'm going to kind of do something different here. I received an email from Glenda Moore. She's been watching, and apparently a couple other people have watched, and they put in some questions in the chat portion of YouTube. And because I don't look at the YouTube while we're meeting, I haven't seen the questions, but she provided them to me. So I wanted to kind of respond. One was from Mary Lynn Jones, and I don't want them to think that we're ignoring them. It's just we don't necessarily have the avenue to look at both things because I'm more concentrating on what the Planning Commission's doing rather than the video. But anyway, Mary Lynn Jones, how long after a citation is issued does property have to be cleaned up? That is a code enforcement nightmare is what it usually is. The way the process works is you're given a fix-it ticket that you have 14 days. After 14 days, the code enforcement officer goes back out. If it's not cleaned up, he issues a citation. The way the ordinances reads is we have to issue 3 citations. Each one goes up in value, so $100, $200, and $500. If the property is still not cleaned up, then we turn it over to the courts. So in essence, if someone wanted to go as long as possible before they mowed their lawn or cleaned their property, it could be up to 3 to 5 months. Then the courts would deem something, and then they have the time frame the courts decided they had to clean it up. So it's really hard to say. So I'm sorry, Ms. Jones, that's probably what you wanted.
Plus the courts would they would get a judgment for that money that's owed.
Generally. The last one was from James, and I'm sorry, Harpel. I hope I didn't mess it up too much. I would like to see the ability to expand the approach, but until it passes, people can get these and pick them up when they're done. So little metal or bricks or wood to jump the curb. Yes, the problem is that sometimes people don't pick those up, and that's where Public Works has a problem with cleanup. But so hopefully they don't feel like we ignored them. It's just it's hard to, as one person, to look at both things. For my update, just so you know, I know last meeting we talked about Franson subdivision, and you guys recommended approval to the city council. Well, I was made aware the day of the city council that the letter I sent out had an error in the date of the public hearing. It said Tuesday, August 14th. Well, Tuesday was August 11th, Friday the 14th. So you will see Franson subdivision come back to you. The notice has gone out and I triple checked to make sure the date was correct. Tuesday, September 8th. So when you see that back on the agenda, you'll know why. I think we have one more meeting left with the 2 council persons for the mixed use ordinance. The council wanted us to go through the entire, I'm calling it mixed use because that's what they're going to change the name to, from form-based code to mixed use, downtown mixed use. We've gone through all 10 chapters. One more meeting just to make sure, double check to make sure we got everything that all the comments have been addressed. And then also let you know, I don't know if you've received the monthly newsletter magazine from Roy. There should be an article in there about the general plan. It is on our website. You can go to the Community Development Department, click on the general plan update, and it takes you to another page where it has the actual general plan, the executive summary that Mark had went over, plus Mark's video explaining the executive summary, and then encourages people to leave comments, concerns, questions, or what have you. I'll probably leave it up for 2 or 3 months, and hopefully people can really get to it and start doing it. So I encourage all of you to take a look at that as well. Some concerns or questions after we had our initial review of it, please do so. The more comments, the better. Once those comments, the comment period kind of is over, meantime, we will have some sort of open house. Suggestions have been a virtual open house or a physical one where we only let 50 people in at a time and maybe have 3 or 4 of those, 2 in one day and 2 in the next. UDOT did it that way and it seemed to work, but I don't know if I want to explain things 4 times, but we'll see. So we're trying to figure that one out, but at least it's online so people can go and take a look at it and give us their likes, dislikes, concerns, and what have you. Other than that, that's all I've got. You're on mute, Jason.
He's gonna end the meeting on mute.
Jason, you're on mute.
My apologies. My chair creaks. I wanted to make sure nobody was getting my creaky chair while we were waiting. My apologies. So with that, thank you, Steve, for the update. And we'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Next time.